Yeah, Saturn people, I am way, way, way down in South London right now. Like so down south, I'm not even in the London postcode right now. It's far down south. But I'm listening to this song by Billie Eilish. It's called Your Power. It dropped like 3 days ago. Like yeah, I think like 3 days ago. And I'm listening to it and I'm thinking, you know what, this song's pretty deep, isn't it? There's a message in here. So yeah, I listened to this properly, stop the car, listen to it properly, and I'm like, okay, read the lyrics as well. I was like, okay, I think we need to talk about this. Because I think it relates to a lot of different situations that a lot of people find themselves in. And I checked the notes on what's it called, genius.com, big up to genius.com. So according to those notes, he's talking about the former boyfriend. So talking about an experience with that. And not to negate that, that's what she's talking about, or at least according to genius.com, right? But I do think it goes much further than that. I think it applies to a lot of different things. There's a line that stood out to me where she says, and you swear you didn't know. Now, apparently that's to do with not knowing, well, him swearing that he didn't know she was underage. She was 16, he was 22. But the reason why it stood out to me is because I think that when it comes to power and the dynamics of power, like at some point in our lives, there's a point where we might go from being the person who has no power to being a person with all the power. And we don't always fully realize that's what's happening. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. It's important to realize it. It's important to acknowledge it. And it's important to understand what is happening. And by the way, when I say power, I guess I really mean perceived power, because ultimately it's kind of a imagined concept. People generally don't have power over you in that sense, but it's more the sense of looking at somebody, seeing somebody as above you, and that's down to sort of societal constructs and all these things that we have in place that have been around for thousands and millions or however many years they've been around for. But because of that, we have this kind of power dynamic that we all kind of buy into on some level. So it's really a perceived power. But anyway, that's another video. That's another video. I'm just going to say power for now. Let me keep it simple. And but yeah, we go from being a person with no power to being a person with power, and we don't always fully realize what's happening. But it's important to understand that it's happening, because there's always a potential for abuse of power. But when we don't realize or don't fully acknowledge the dynamic shifting, that potential, I believe, goes a lot higher, because we're not aware of ourselves at this point. So if you imagine, and this is not necessarily related to what Billie Eilish specifically is talking about, but just in general. But if you imagine you're somebody who, as a child, maybe you were picked on. Maybe you don't have to imagine, I'm sorry if that's the case. But if you were picked on or bullied or made fun of or teased. In fact, I think a lot of us have been through something like that. Maybe not in a bad, well, it's always a bad way, but I mean, maybe it's not in a long-term thing. Maybe for some of us it's just a minor thing, but a few people here and there, but then it was pretty much resolved. But I feel like at some stage, whether it's a little or a lot, we've all kind of been through a phase where we've been the person being teased, picked on, bullied, made fun of, ignored, devalued, dehumanized, things along those lines. At some point, I think we've all been in that position. And if you've been in that position for a while, to the point where you somewhat believe that is all you are, it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, where you kind of believe you're nothing, and you get told you're nothing enough times, you end up believing it yourself. But then maybe at some point later in life, maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 years later, now you find yourself the manager of a supermarket, somebody's boss somewhere, and some part of you realizes that you can tell people to do something and they have to do it, because you're the boss. But you're not fully acknowledging that power change, because in your mind, you're still the person who isn't anything, who isn't nothing, who's worthless, who's devalued. You're not fully acknowledging that power change. But part of you is like, well, I can say this and I can do that and I can do something. So that potential for abuse of power increases so much. So self-awareness, I think what it comes down to a lot of the time is self-awareness, that we need to be self-aware of ourselves and need to be able to question ourselves at all times. We have to be questioning ourselves at all times. And whenever there is any kind of power shift, and even if it isn't a power shift, it could be that you were always that guy who was seen as the person in charge, of the person with the power in any circumstance. Even if that's you, it's important to be aware of that, because when we're not aware of that, we become the monsters that once tortured us. We become the monsters that we claim we'll never be. There's a recent case with Noel Clarke where he's been accused of various power abuses and bullying and sexual misconduct for more than over 20 women have made accusations now. And I'm not going to say whether he did it or not. I wasn't there. It don't look good for you, bro. I'll tell you that. It don't look good. And look, I don't know his life, so I'm not going to say what he's been through, but similar sorts of things in a sense of not recognizing that power. Because there's one story I read where they talk about him running a class where he was asking women or asking people to take their clothes off, and they felt forced into doing it. And on his side, he's saying, "Oh no, nobody was forced. It's it's just a class, and anybody could take part. Anybody could say no. It was open for men and women." And like I said, I don't want to make too many assumptions. I don't know the guy, but again, it's one of these things where it's like, if you are in that position of power and you're asking people to do things, even if in your mind you're not forcing them to do it, how that's perceived could be completely different. If you're not aware of that, so that's one possible scenario. It's people cleaning up, maybe. I mean, not like road sweepers cleaning up, just like people clean up their neighborhood. That's a good thing, actually. Okay, so way down in South London, regular neighbors just go around cleaning up neighborhood. That is a good thing. That is a good thing. We don't see that in my parts of London, but way down in South London, apparently neighbors, the regular civilians just go around clean up neighborhood. Okay, well, that's a distraction from the video. Not what I was talking about, but just something I just noticed while I'm sitting in my car way down in South London. Anyway, but yeah, it's just recognizing your position and recognizing the things that you do and the things that you say and how they could be perceived, and when you realize that, you should be making extra steps and make sure people understand that what you're asking of them, they can say no and there are no repercussions. I don't think we do that enough, or maybe even at all. And it leads to this environment where people don't challenge you. And when people don't challenge you, there's always a problem. You can never allow yourself to be in a position where people are afraid to approach you. People are afraid to say no to you. People are afraid to tell you that they think what you're saying is wrong or just complete BS. If you cultivate that kind of environment, whether consciously or subconsciously, it forms this abuse of power. Whether that's what happened with Billy, whether that's what happened with Noel Clarke, I don't know. I'm just saying that is something that I've seen in my lifetime and something that I've had some experiences with, and just hearing this song was like, okay, I think we need to talk about this and get it out there. So yeah, big up to Billie Eilish, big up to everybody who's going through it or been through it. It's tough, and for those who have been the abusers of power, you can get help. You can get help, but you need to recognize, you first need to understand that there is a problem. And because it may be that you're not trying to be the tyrant, maybe you're not trying to be this abusive person, but you have to understand that the position you're in and how people look at that position and how you cultivate the environments around you and the people around, and how you treat the people around you or speak to the people around you, cultivates that kind of environment or that kind of attitudes that people then look at you, whether you realize it or not, they're looking at you as that guy who we can't say no to. And I'm going to go on a limb and say that's not what you want to do. That's not what you want to do. And for those of you who do actually want to be abusing your powers, then no, you're just wrong. You're just wrong. Get help. Get help. But yeah, let me, I think I'm just kind of in shock by people actually cleaning up their neighborhoods. I see that stuff on TV. I don't think I've ever seen that in real life. People just going around and clean up their own neighborhoods. It's a good thing. It should happen more often. Anyway, let me stop there. Yeah, let me know what you think of that. Let me know if you have any thoughts on that. If you've heard the song, if you haven't heard the song, definitely check out the song. But yeah, let me know what you think of the song, of that whole thing about power and abuse. If you got any suggestions, recommendations, drop in the comments and send them through. I'll see what I can do. Like, share, subscribe, because we're doing this thing. You get me, fam? More videos on the screen. Check out my other channels as well. Much appreciated. But that's gonna be it for the minute, guys. Until whenever, if ever. Peace.